He saw her naked, and now he only has two options: marriage or death. Deep winter, Alaska. The outside world felt frozen in time. Vast, white, and merciless. The Terran Allied Forces Research Base stood isolated among mountains, forever blanketed in snow. Inside, artificial heat, silence broken only by system alarms, and soldiers learning to live with ice in their bones and boredom in their hearts. Ryan Blake, a former Marine scout, now works security on a diplomatic mission designed to foster integration between humans and newly contacted alien species. The facility was classified, a political and scientific experiment, and dangerously fragile. She had arrived just 5 days ago. Her name, Zariah, labeled an imperial emissary of the Varine, a humanoid species with a compatible biology, but a culture forged on icy worlds built around honor. Her skin was a milky white that shimmered blue under certain lights, like living porcelain. Her long black hair was woven into ritual braids that hypnotized Ryan even when he tried not to stare. She walked like someone who owed no one an explanation. And truly, she didn't. The treaty demanded respect. And in the tense silence of the base, Zariah's presence changed the very air. Too beautiful, too cold, impossible to ignore. Ryan worked the night shift, that strange hour between 3 and 4 a.m., when the human body still expects to be asleep. Some lights were off in the southern wing, and a soft warning blinked on the panel. Door ajar, Sector B7, thermal area. He grabbed his jacket, muttering to himself, "No one else ever does round around here," and walked down the quiet halls to the flag section. The warning said, thermal area, but there was only one active installation there. The alien sauna, a geothermally heated space designed specifically for the physiological needs of the Varine. Treaty mandated, restricted access, but the door was cracked open. "Damn it," he muttered. "This is going to mean paperwork." He knocked lightly on the metal frame. "Anyone in there?" No response. He stepped inside, cautiously. The heat hit him like a wall. Moisture clung to his skin. Thick steam drifted through the room, turning it into a dreamlike haze. The orange glow from the thermal rocks cast vague shapes and drifting shadows. That's when he saw her. From behind, her soaked hair hung down her bare back. Steam draped her porcelain skin like a veil. Tribal tattoos traced down her spine, symbols he couldn't understand, but which seemed to come alive in the heat. She turned, slowly. Her eyes were pitch black. No irises, no judgment, only presence. Ryan froze. Literally. The surrounding heat disappeared beneath the ice down his spine. He spun around so fast he nearly tripped over himself. I'm sorry, I thought there was an alarm." She didn't scream. She didn't cover herself. She just stood there, unmoving. "You saw me." Her voice was calm, clear, not angry. "It was an accident." Ryan stared at the ground, red with embarrassment. "Among my people," she said, like reciting an ancient law. When royalty is seen naked without permission, the witness must take responsibility before the clan. He swallowed hard. And what kind of responsibility? Zariah stepped closer, still wrapped in steam, still unrushed. "Marriage," she said, "or public execution." Ryan didn't sleep that night, or the next, or the one after. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it again. The steam swirling around her, her black eyes locked onto his. The sentence delivered with such serene finality that he couldn't even think to protest. Marriage or execution. 2 words. A world of consequences. He tried to speak to command, but all he got was, "Blake, you broke protocol. She's royalty. Context doesn't matter." This goes to the Interspecies Committee. The so-called committee consisted of 4 humans and 3 Varine. And according to the whispers in the hallways, the 3 aliens had already voted for execution. To them, honor was sacred. Royal nudity was holy, and Ryan, whether he meant to or not, had broken one of the oldest taboos in their culture. General McAdams tried to smooth things over. "Maybe we can claim a sensor malfunction. Say he was forced to enter. Blame a failure in the AI." But Zariah had already sent an official message to the council, her voice steady and firm. "I accept the laws of my people. He saw me. He must marry me, or face the circle." There was no hatred in her voice, just conviction. The base was split. Some soldiers laughed it off. Others were nervous. You're gonna marry an alien just because you saw her naked? One of the techs said, completely tactless, "Dude, you're dead. I'd be picking out the wedding dress already." But Ryan wasn't laughing. He started studying the Varine, searching for loopholes, explanations. He learned that among them, the royal body was more than just flesh. It was a spiritual emblem. To be seen without armor, without clothing, without ritual, was to expose one's soul. And he had entered like a trespasser, an intruder. Zoraya didn't seek him out for the next 2 days. He only saw her from a distance, always surrounded by her advisors, always poised, always silent. Until the third night, he was summoned. Her chamber was a circular room carved with glowing patterns on the walls. At the center sat a low throne, surrounded by translucent crystals that pulsed with soft blue tones. She studied him carefully. She wore a dark robe marked with silver symbols that shimmered as she moved. "You came," she said. "Didn't have much of a choice. Everyone has a choice. That's what makes your kind so dangerous." Ryan crossed his arms, tried to keep his cool. "You don't want me as a mate. You don't even know me." She tilted her head slightly. "Knowing comes later. Duty comes first. That's how it is with us. And if I refuse, the circle will be called," she answered. "Your execution will take place before both our peoples. To preserve order." He gave a bitter laugh. "Nice way to do diplomacy." Zoraya stepped closer. The crystals around her glowed stronger. "You think you saw me by accident. But nothing between our species is an accident. So you believe it was fate?" She came so close. He could feel her body heat even without touching her. "I believe," she said gently, "that maybe fate is tired of waiting, and now it demands a sacrifice." That night, he received an official notification. Preliminary ceremony scheduled in 72 hours. Location, the Hall of Ice. That was it. 3 days to decide if he would live as the husband of an alien, or die as a symbol of human error, and no one could make that choice for him. The ceremony was set to take place in the Hall of Ice, an ancient cave converted into a ceremonial temple by the Varine within the base. The temperature inside was kept below freezing as a religious requirement, and the crystal walls reflected 1,000 frozen images of anyone who entered. Ryan was given the official human ceremonial attire, a deep blue cloak made of thermal fabric, embroidered with silver and patterns that mimicked Varine tradition. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a man he barely recognized. Soldier, war survivor, war orphan, and now, the unwilling fiancé of an alien empress. He tried to speak with Zoraya one last time, but her guards blocked the way. She had entered ritual purity isolation, which meant no physical contact, no word spoken, until the final choice was made. And that's when the real threat appeared. Intercepted transmission. Signal from Orbita 5, capital of the Varine Empire. The message was short, formal, and devastating. "If execution is avoided without marriage, we will consider the human base a hostile territory. The treaty will be void. Retaliation will be immediate." An elegant way of saying, either there's a wedding or there's a war. The base's leadership went into meltdown. The council was deadlocked. The diplomats vanished from the main wing. And Ryan, standing alone in the central corridor, felt the weight of an entire universe drop onto his shoulders. "You have to marry her," McAdams said, his tone very different now. "This isn't about you anymore. It's about the treaty. It's about preventing bloodshed. So I made a mistake, and the whole planet pays the price." "Yes," the general replied. "Welcome to interstellar diplomacy." 48 hours. That's how long Ryan had left to make a real decision. And he spent those hours digging through everything he could find on the Varine. That's when he found the exception. A forgotten clause from an ancient Varine ritual, recorded by UN archaeologists 2 decades earlier. If, at the moment of judgment, the royal bride breaks the cycle of honor with true words before the circle, she may release the other without punishment, provided she proves she was not dishonored in spirit. Translation: Zoraya could save him, but that would mean she'd have to lie, or declare something no Varine had ever dared, that she felt something for him, that there was will, not obligation. But there was an even bigger problem. If she did that, she'd be exiled. Ryan lay on the cot in his isolation cell. For diplomatic reasons, they said, staring at the ceiling, when he heard footsteps. She entered, alone, for the first time since the sauna. She wore white. Her skin looked even paler under the cold lights. "I know what you found," she said. He stood up. Avoid her gaze. "You can free me. I can't. But if you do, you lose everything." Silence. She stepped closer, stopped a meter away. "I don't want to be forced into marriage, and I don't want to force you either. But I also don't want to see you die over something that was fate's mistake, not yours." "Then say it, in front of the circle. Clear me." "I can't," she said, and for the first time, her voice trembled. "If I say there was will, that there was no dishonor, I'm saying that I accepted your presence, that I felt something, that there was desire." Ryan finally looked at her and asked gently, "And was there?" She didn't answer right away, but her eyes, dark as the void between stars, never left his. "If you ask me to say it, I will." Complete silence. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. "But if I say it," she continued, "I'll never return to my world. I'll never use my name again. I'll be exiled." Mark. Ryan felt the weight of something far greater than himself. And in that moment, he knew any choice would break something, or someone. The next day, the ceremony would begin, and no one knew what would shatter. A man's life, a woman's honor, or the peace between worlds. The hall of ice was full. Humans stood on one side, dressed in formal robes, faces tense, eyes cast downward. Varine lined the other, still as statues, cloaked in black furs, their eyes glinting like obsidian stones. In the center stood the oval altar of blue crystal, where the bond was to be sealed, or where Ryan would be handed over to the circle, the ritual execution for violation of honor. The entire world was watching via holographic transmission. Diplomats in orbital stations, heads of state, hundreds of millions of viewers. Zoraya entered first. She wore pure white, a garment that looked like it had been woven from frozen light itself. Her head held high, hair loose, skin glowing with the reflection of the crystals. She looked like an ancient spirit, beautiful, solemn, untouchable. Ryan entered soon after, silent. His face was tense but steady. His breath curled in the freezing air. He looked at the altar as if it were an execution chamber. The circle of judges stood. In the presence of the Varine Empire and the Terran Alliance, the elder judge spoke, her voice echoing across the chamber. "The fate of the trespasser shall be sealed today. He shall join, or he shall fall." Silence. Absolute. The judge turned to Zoraya. "You, daughter of the throne of Jachurin, do you witness this union?" Zoraya stayed silent, for 2 seconds too long. "Yes," she finally said. The judge turned to Ryan. "You, human, do you accept this sacred bond, even without understanding its ancient depth?" He hesitated, then looked at her. Zoraya glanced away, just for a second, and in that moment, he understood everything. Ryan took a deep breath and said, firmly, "I can't accept." A low gasp rippled through the crowd like thunder. "You refuse?" the judge asked, startled. "I can't accept a force bond. Not for me, and not for her." The circle stirred. Varine guards began to move. The execution protocol had been triggered, but then Zoraya raised her hand. The guards froze. She took a deep breath and walked to the altar alone. "I invoke the ancient clause, the broken cycle." More murmurs. One of the judges dropped to their knees. To invoke it was nearly heresy. "You wish to declare innocence before the circle?" the judge asked, barely audible. "No." Silence. Zoraya turned to Ryan, met his eyes. "I declare that I wanted you there that night. I accepted the moment. I allowed myself to be seen. Because, in my spirit, there was no violation, there was connection." The judges cried out. A siren blared from the central system. The Varine audience rose in outrage. Tradition had been broken, but the judge couldn't object. The clause was real, and her declaration was valid. Zoraya then removed the royal sash from her shoulders and let fall onto the ice. "I renounce the throne. I accept exile." Ryan stood frozen. She had made the choice for him. She had broken herself to save him. That's when he moved. He stepped up onto the altar, took her hand, and in front of everyone, he said, "If you're going into exile, I'm going with you." The ice, once a wall between two species, now held the weight of two traitors to logic, but lovers of truth. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, if you believe that not even the stars can stop what's true, then hit subscribe, because there are many more stories like this waiting for you. The Hall of Ice was evacuated within minutes. Marine guards, human soldiers, furious judges, panicked diplomats. Every side saw the scene through a different lens: betrayal, disgrace, miracle, or madness. Ryan and Zariah were taken under protection to the diplomatic wing, not as prisoners, but as dangerous variables. 2 days later, the Varine royal order made it official. Zariah, daughter of the House of Ghrn, is stripped of her lineage. Her name has been removed from the chants. She is considered dead in the eyes of the Empire. Ryan read the statement in silence, then tore it up. She simply looked out the window, where snow was falling gently over the base. There was something in her eyes, not pain, but emptiness, as if everything that once defined her had been erased in a few words. "They erased your story," he said. "It doesn't matter," she replied calmly. "I still have my steps." Ryan sat beside her, touched her for the first time, hands intertwined over a thermal blanket. "You knew this would happen. And still, I chose it. And now we're free." But freedom had a bitter taste. Back on Earth, the media exploded. Human breaks alien tradition, claims forbidden love. War avoided, but at what cost? Interspecies couple triggers unprecedented diplomatic crisis. Religious groups marched in the streets. Political leaders called for Varine to be banned from Earth's airspace. And the Intergalactic Congress suspended all treaties, temporarily. All because of one look, one naked body, and 2 words: mutual desire. Zariah and Ryan were placed under temporary diplomatic protection, which in practice meant monitored exile in an abandoned installation in northern Alaska, far from everything and everyone, a place among frozen mountains, with no Wi-Fi, no press, no rescue. They arrived by helicopter. A modular house, 2 bedrooms, solar generator, 6 months worth of supplies. No authorized contact. "Welcome to your new home," the pilot said before flying off. "Stay quiet. And if you don't have kids." The joke died in the cold air. In the days that followed, silence ruled. Ryan started watching Zariah like never before. No titles, no protocol, no armor. She seemed more human, but also more alone. At night, she barely slept. She walked barefoot in the snow. She spoke to the crystals she wore around her neck, tiny fragments from her homeworld. "They sing," she told him once, catching him watching, "but only when they miss home." "Do you miss it?" "I feel everything. All the time." Ryan tried building routines, cooking, cleaning, fixing equipment. But something was growing inside him. Guilt. "If I just agreed to marry you right away, none of this would have happened. You'd still have your home. And I wouldn't have you," she said, looking into his eyes. Silence. "Do you regret it?" She touched his face with her fingertips, like she was touching something sacred. "No, but now we have to survive this." By the 3rd week, the political crisis had worsened. Varine ships pulled out of Earth's orbit. Human settlers on mixed colonies began suffering attacks. Rumors spread. Some extremist groups wanted to use Ryan as a symbol of resistance. Others wanted him gone, to restore balance. Exile, once a punishment, was now the only place they were safe. But they both knew it wouldn't last forever. On the last night of calm, during a snowstorm that completely cut off the house, Ryan lit a makeshift sauna, built with generators and heated rocks. Zariah stepped inside silently. This time, there was no tension, no mistake, no one watching. She removed the white cloak, stood before him, completely bare, and said, "Now, you may see me. No fear, no consequences. Just see." Ryan looked into her eyes, touched her face, and for the first time, she smiled. Not as a fallen empress, but as a free woman. Amid the ruins of diplomacy, 2 hearts had finally learned how to listen to each other. Spring was slow to arrive in Alaska. Even so, the ice around their modular home began to melt, just a little. Tiny streams ran beneath frozen rocks. The sun showed itself for only a few timid minutes, but enough to remind them the world wasn't dead, just asleep. They had survived the worst. Now, they had to learn how to live with what was left. The first real conversations between them started off practical. The greenhouse broke. Solar radiation dropped. I need to chop firewood. But slowly, the words grew a soul. What did you dream of being before you became a princess? Why did you join the military, Ryan? Have you ever loved someone? One especially cold night, they sat side by side in the small room, watching the snowstorm through the window. Zariah broke the silence. When I was raised for court life, they taught me that love is a distraction, that it weakens you, that it makes you foolish. And what do you believe now? He asked. She didn't answer. She just rested her head on his shoulder. If this is weakness, she whispered, then how beautiful it is to be weak with you. Rituals began to form between them. Each morning, Ryan made a warm drink using local leaves. Zariah told stories of her planet, of ice-sculpted cities, with towers that hummed in harmony with gravity. He built makeshift furniture. She carved symbols into the wood, blessings from a language no one else on earth could understand. And at night they read. She picked up human books. He tried to translate her ancient chants. There were no kisses yet, no declarations, but something deeper had taken root. Presence. By the 5th week, the connection changed. It happened after a small accident. Ryan slipped from an outdoor ladder, hurt his shoulder, and lost his balance. She rushed to him, cradled his head in her lap, pressed her hands over his wounds. "Stay with me," she said, and in her voice was real panic. He looked up at her, dazed, and replied, "I'm not going anywhere. Not anymore." And there, beneath the gray sky, surrounded by fractured ice, they kissed for the first time, a slow kiss, unhurried, as if sealing a promise with their lips. And in that moment, politics meant nothing. No empire, no war, just them. There was only skin, warmth, and mutual choice. The weeks that followed became a different kind of time. Zariah began making art, sculpting local crystals with fragments of heat, creating living shapes that looked like frozen light flowers. Ryan trained, tended the space, built a wooden fence around the house. They became companions, not just lovers, but partners in rebuilding. And at night, when the cold crept in and the world outside threatened to remind them they were exiled, they began a new ritual, lying side by side in the sauna. No words, just breathing and knowing, "I'm here." One day, while chopping wood together, Ryan asked a simple question. "If you could go back, would you do it all over again?" Zariah looked at him. "Not only would I do it again, I'd do it faster." He smiled, and for the first time, she laughed. Not a soft laugh, but a deep, unguarded one. The kind that bursts from someone who finally feels alive. But the ice had broken. Someone had found them. And now, their love could end with a single bullet. It was early morning. The Alaskan sky was overcast, as usual, but the air felt different. Heavier. Too still. Ryan woke to the sound. A faint snap. Precise. Metal against snow. He sat up slowly. Heard again. Footsteps. He slipped out of bed in silence. Threw on his tactical jacket. Grabbed the old rifle he kept disassembled behind the shelf. He never thought he'd need to use it here. Until now. Zariah woke. Her dark eyes snapped open, instincts kicking in. "Stay here," he said quietly. But she was already on her feet, already sensing danger. "They're here for us," she murmured. I recognized the steps. Vereen trackers. No, exile hunters. Humans paid by extremists on both sides. People who profit from the end of peace. Ryan growled under his breath, placing the rifle on the table. "If they come through the door, they won't get far." Zariah touched the crystal at her neck. Her fingers were trembling. She had never been trained to kill, but she knew how to die with honor. Only she didn't want to die. Not now. Not after finally learning what it meant to live. The footsteps stopped. Silence. And then, boom. The side wall of the house exploded into flames. Shards of glass, wood, and ice flew like hell-born shrapnel. Ryan threw himself over Zariah, shielding her with his body. Shouts. Visual on target. She's with him. Shoot the traitor. Gunfire tore through the air. Ryan rolled. Returned fire twice through the breach. One bullet hit an attacker in the shoulder. The man fell with a muffled scream. The other two pulled back but kept circling the cabin. Zariah had a shallow wound on her arm, a metal shard. The blood was dark, thick. She didn't complain, just stood up and ran with him to the sauna. the only part of the house reinforced with titanium plates. They entered, locked the door, both panting, lungs burning. "Are we going to die in here?" she asked, her voice breaking, for the first time, with fear in her eyes. Ryan looked around. No exits, no windows, just steam and stone. "No, I'm getting you out of here." "Ow." Then, he did something unexpected. He grabbed the old communicator, the one hidden beneath the sauna floor, the device he had sworn never to use. A direct emergency beacon to Central Command. He punched in the code. "Signal active, location transmitted." "You just gave away our position," she said, stunned. "I know, but if we're going to die, we'll die trying. Or live, if anyone still thinks we're worth saving." Outside, the hunters were placing charges against the sauna door. Charge set. Below the entry. Inside, Zariah stood. "They're coming. Then when they open it, we go up. There is no up. Then we make one." Ryan grabbed one of the thermal stones, still glowing hot, and used it like a sledgehammer to smash the ventilation shaft in the ceiling. She helped. Desperate effort, but not impossible. The first explosion hit. The sauna door blew inward. Light, smoke, chaos. But they were already climbing, scratched, bleeding, squeezing through a hole just big enough for a body, falling out into the snow, straight into the frozen brush. They ran. Gunfire, red lights, shouts behind them, cold on their skin, heat between their joined hands. Ryan held her hand like it was the only real thing left. And maybe it was. Half an hour later, nearly out of strength, they saw something in the sky. A ship, human insignia, Peace Force, beacon activated, flashing light, ropes descending. Ryan Blake, Zariah G.H. Iron. "Get down. We're here for you." They dropped into the snow. Hands up, bodies pressed together. The ship landed. The hunters were detained. The cabin, engulfed in fire. But they survived. And in the end, the only thing Ryan could say, through smoke, cold, and blood, was, "Do you still see me?" She smiled, even with cracked lips and wounded skin. More than ever, they faced exile, hatred, and death. Now, they faced something even harder, being heard. The world started talking about them again. But this time, the conversation was different. The Peace Force unit that rescued them made sure to document everything. The unauthorized attack, the attempt at extrajudicial execution, and most importantly, the way Ryan and Zariah fought side by side, protecting each other as equals. The media lit up again. But now, the headlines were different. The couple who survived exile and came back stronger, Ryan and Zariah, the bridge between two worlds. Could love be our last chance at peace? They were taken to an orbital medical center. Zariah required 2 biological grafts on her arm. Ryan had a fractured rib treated with regenerative nanostructures. But neither of them accepted being separated. "If we're going to heal," she said, "we heal together." In the diplomatic wing, the Vereen response was cold. "The exile stands. She is no longer one of us. But we will listen to what she has to say." It was more than they expected. 3 weeks later, they were invited to speak at the Intergalactic Congress on Europa, Jupiter's moon. It was a moment they never thought they'd live to see. A massive chamber, 1,000 voices whispering. At the main table, the leaders of the galaxy's major species. Among them, both human and Vereen delegates, all waiting to hear from the 2 outcasts. Ryan stood first. His speech was simple, direct. "I don't understand Vereen honor, but I do understand what it means to protect someone with your body. And she did that for me. So I ask, how many of you have done the same for someone else?" Whispers, silence, respect. Zariah stood beside him. "My culture taught me to fear touch, to hide my face, to obey bloodlines. But no ritual saved me. It was the human beside me who saw me and didn't take advantage. He didn't violate me. He understood me." She turned to face Ryan, standing in the center of the chamber. "And I choose to keep being seen by him, by anyone brave enough to look beyond tradition." The vote was symbolic, but powerful. By a count of 18 to 5, the Congress declared, voluntary interspecies unions founded on emotional bonds are to be recognized as legitimate diplomatic alliances. Ryan and Zariah didn't just survive. They created a new category in galactic law. But the most important moment wasn't the political victory. It was what happened that night. back at the orbital station, in the room where they were staying, far from the crowd, far from the speeches, just the two of them. Zariah sat on the edge of the bed, bare feet on cold metal. She looked at him. You know what I've never said? What? She took a breath. That I love you. Ryan stepped closer, touched her face, looked deep into the eyes he first saw that frozen day in the sauna. I never said it either. But I do, Zariah. I love you too. They kissed. This time, without urgency, without fear. No need to survive anymore. Just love. Whole. Deserved. Finally seen. They had changed laws. Touched hearts. But now, they had to decide whether they deserved the world they helped create. Europa rotated slowly beneath their feet. From the great dome of the diplomatic station, Ryan and Zariah gazed at Jupiter. Like a sleeping god, a distant colossus full of unblinking eyes. And that's exactly how they felt now. Watched. Anticipated. Because the invitation had arrived. After long negotiations, the UN and the Varine Council offered something unimaginable. We would like to appoint you as permanent ambassadors of a new cultural alliance, to travel from world to world, teaching what becomes possible when fear is set aside. A mission of peace, with diplomatic status, full protection, historical recognition. It was the kind of future Zariah had never dared to dream. It was a chance for Ryan to be something more than a lost soldier, and they both knew exactly what it meant. But there was a cost. To ensure the neutrality of the mission, a symbolic gesture of goodwill was required. They would have to renounce any public romantic relationship. No marriage, no children, no visible affection in front of delegations. You will be beacons, said one advisor, but beacons can't sway with the tide. And there it was, the dilemma, to be the voice of millions, or to live as themselves, to become symbols, or just remain Ryan and Zariah, lovers, humans, free. Zariah stayed quiet for a long time, her gaze lost among the distant moons. I'd give up my story for you, she said, but I don't know if I can give our story to the world. And what if refusing this means everything we did was for nothing? Ryan asked. Nothing was for nothing, because I found you, and the universe has already changed because of that. Ryan took her hand. And what if we accept it? Then we'll have to love in silence, sleep in separate quarters, be an example that bleeds quietly. Silence. Would it still be love? She asked, eyes glistening. Ryan didn't answer, because even he didn't know. On the night before the decision, they walked the empty halls of the station, hands nearly touching, but not quite, as if they were already practicing the sacrifice. They stopped in front of an airlock. Beyond it, the vast black of space. Zariah spoke. The world only believes in what hides, but love only survives when it's seen. She looked at him. So what do we choose? Do we stay silent and change the world? Or do we speak out and risk it turning its back? Ryan took a deep breath and said, let's tell the truth. If they accept us as we are, good. If they don't, good too. Because this time, we choose us. They didn't save the universe, but they showed it could still be saved. And that was enough. 2 years later, the Electo Prime glides silently through interstellar space. Its hull reflects the light of a blue star as it crosses the neutral zone between worlds still learning to trust each other. Inside a small auditorium, children from 3 different species listen in awe to the story of a woman made of ice and a man who dare to see beyond the snow. And at the front, sitting under a soft light, is Zariah. And that night, in the middle of the cold, I realized that what I feared the most wasn't being seen. It was never being truly looked at. The children applaud. Ryan smiles from the back. He's gathering materials for the next session. Sometimes he speaks about defense tactics and interspecies rights. Sometimes he just tells stories, like the one about the crystal that sings when it misses home. They've traveled to 18 planets, were kicked out of 3, celebrated on 9, ignored on 6, but they never stopped, because someone has to start. Someone has to be the first to love without apologizing for it. They sleep in separate quarters, by choice. But every night, they share the same observation deck. There beneath the stars they sit, and talk about the day, about the galaxy, and about where it all began. Ryan once asked, "Do you still remember the sauna?" She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "That's where I was born a second time." Silence. "In you," he answered, eyes fixed on the infinite stretch of space. "Me?" That's when I learned what it means to truly see someone and be seen in return. The universe didn't become a paradise, but on some worlds, now, two bodies can walk hand in hand without being stoned. And on certain orbital stations, there are small statues, carved from crystal. They show two figures before the ice, one reaching out, the other accepting. No weapons, no power, just presence. And that, the wise said, changed everything. If you believe love can cross galaxies, if you've ever rooted for an impossible couple, if you think the most beautiful kind of courage is loving out loud, then subscribe to the channel. Tell us in the comments what touched you the most, and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that the impossible sometimes just needs to be seen.